This is Math 990, Module 6 Review, video number 2. So we have a rectangle. Right when I see that, I'm for sure drawing myself a little rectangle. We have the width is 2 meters less than the length. So we've got our length, and the width is 2 meters less. So we'll just say L minus 2. Okay. If the area is 48, put that on the inside, find the length and the width of the rectangle. Well, we know we have length times width is how you find the area, and so we'll just do L times L minus 2 will equal that area of 48. So let's take it up here. We'll have L, so we'll work that out. Multiply L times L is L squared minus 2L equals 48. Again, when we're solving a quadratic equation, we need everything on the same side equal to 0. So we'll minus 48 from each side. So those cancel. Now I have L squared minus 2L minus 48 equals 0. All right. At this point, we need to factor this. So we're looking, since it's a factor or a coefficient of 1 in front, we can just kind of go for it. So we'll have L in the first places. Now we need two numbers that multiply to negative 48 and add to negative 2. Well, if they multiply to a negative number, one has to be negative, one positive. That's the only way to multiply to get a negative number. And we also need them to add to negative 2. So you can start listing out, 2 and 24, 3 and 16, 4 and 12, 6 and 8. Ooh, those look good. Now if they multiply to be negative 48, but they have to add to be negative 2, if I had a negative 8 and a positive 6, let's see if that would work. So 6 times negative 8 gives us negative 48. 6 plus negative 8 gives us negative 2. So we'll do minus 8 there, plus 6 there, and that'll give us our answer. Okay, last step, we need to set them equal to 0 and solve. So L minus 8 equals 0. Add the 8 to each side. So L equals 8. And then we get negative 6. L plus 6 equals 0. Minus 6, so L equals negative 6. Now we can't have a negative length, and so the 8 is going to be our answer. So length is 8 meters. Now we know the width is 2 meters less, and so that's going to be the 6. So that's kind of where the 6 comes in, but just use the positive number and then use that to find the other part of it. So just once again, highly recommend drawing a rectangle and then just drawing the length. Do it in the same variable. So try to have one is just, the length or the width, and then the other side in terms of that. So in this case, it had to be 2 meters less. So we just say, okay, whatever the length is, we'll take away 2 of those meters. So hopefully that one makes sense. I know that's kind of a tricky one. All right. Let's see if we can get one that's not prime, that's not a coefficient of 1 in front. Let's look at 13. So first of all, look for greatest common factor. 2 is not going to divide out of everything, so let's do our rainbow method. We have 2 times 15 equals 30, and then we want factors of 30 that add up to negative 13. Now, we know they either, since they multiply to be a positive number, they have to either both be positive or both be negative. Because that's a negative 13, that tells us they're both going to be negative. So 30, we've got 1 and 30, 2 and 15, which that's tempting to think that's going to work, but they both have to be negative. And negative 2 plus negative 15 is going to be negative 17, so that won't work. Ooh, what about 3 and 10? 3 times 10 gives us that 30, and negative 3 plus negative 10 gives us negative 13. So that's going to work. So those are the ones we're going to use. Now once we have those numbers, what we're going to do is we're just going to rewrite this equation. I'll write it first here, 2z squared minus 13z plus 15. We're going to rewrite this same equation, but in place of the negative 13z, we're going to put negative 3 minus 10z. So notice that still adds up to negative 13z, but we just kind of separated it out. Okay? And we're doing that because that gives us a way that we can factor this. So first we'll kind of look at this one and then look at this set. So 2z squared minus 3z, it looks like we can factor out a z, and then we'll be left with 2z minus 3. Now on the second one, that 10 has a negative out front. So we're going to actually factor out a negative 5. I can see 5 comes out of both of those. But because I'm factoring out a negative number, what does that do to the inside? Well, that's going to make both terms negative. So negative 10 divided by negative 5, we get a positive 2z. 15 divided by negative 5, we're going to get a negative 3. Now notice we did do that correctly, and because we did that correctly, these are going to be the same. If you didn't do it correctly, some of your signs might be different. So don't just change your sign, look and make sure you've factored it correctly. Okay, so next we factor out the 2z minus 3. So we've got kind of one term here and one term here. So we'll just, factor out a 2z minus 3. And then we're left with a z there minus 5. Now, what do we do if we're unsure if this is correct? Well, we can multiply it out. After we multiply it out, it should equal this 2z squared minus 13z plus 15. Okay, we're going to scroll down a little bit. Let's look at 16. We need to solve this equation. Hopefully the first thing you're seeing is this equals 6 on the other side. So you're going to want to minus that 6 over first thing and then start working on it. So 12x squared plus 1x, and we minus that 6 over, and then now you can proceed with the problem. But just, get it all equal to 0 first. That's going to be your first step. Okay, we looked at one like 17. 18, just a hint, look at greatest common factor first. Let's look at one factor by grouping. Let's look at this number 22. So factoring by grouping, you kind of look at sets at a time. So we'll kind of look at that one and then this one. So first set, I can see a y is going to factor out. So we factor out a y, we're left with x squared and then just minus 7. So the y got basically divided out of both terms. The second one, I can see I have a negative 8 I could factor out. So I've got that negative 8 first. Notice again, this negative 8 is going to change both signs on the inside. So negative 8 divided by the first term, we just are left with a positive x squared. 56 divided by negative 8, we're going to get a negative 7. So notice, we love to see that. X squared minus 7 in both terms. Sweet. So that will factor out. So x squared minus 7, and then y minus 8 is left over. So quick check. I saw that x squared and I thought, oh, we better make sure there's no difference of squares, and there's not. 7's not a perfect square, so that's the furthest it's going to go. All right, let's keep going down. Okay, we'll look at 25 for our last problem. Notice here we have perfect squares. 16x squared is a perfect square, 25y squared is a perfect square. And so if you remember, what we can do is we can say, okay, what's the square root of 16x squared? Well, that will give us 4 from the 16 part and x from the x part. if we want the square root of 25y squared, similarly, square root of 25 is just 5. Square root of that y squared will be y. So we can take those and say, okay, we'll get 4x for those first parts, and then minus 5y plus 5y for the second parts. And that will be our final answer. So these ones aren't too bad, but you just have to notice the difference of squares. Please reach out if any of these aren't making sense or if you'd like to see another example. I'd love to help.